A consultant is somebody who's going to come in and say, this is what you need to do, and this is how you do it. A coach is going to ask questions. What do you think? What if it sounded easy? That's one of my favorite coaching questions. Why? Because I'm like, nothing sounds easy. I wouldn't have hired you if something sounded easy. But okay, ask me that question. Sure. And then an advisor is somebody who asks questions based on what you're saying. I'm thinking they ask questions to get to the heart of what's really needed, right? The root cause is something that you've talked about before. And then they offer advice based on that.
Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what you ask? You, your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tonya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Gwen Bortner, we're here to show you how.
Have you ever had the experience of hiring help in your business that actually didn't help? If you've been in business for any length of time, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Chances are you've invested in a coach, a consultant, maybe somebody who called themselves an advisor, and they didn't deliver what you really needed. Or maybe they delivered something, but it wasn't what you expected. Today, we are going to tackle the critical question of how to choose the right type of business support for your specific situation. I'm Tonya Kubo, and I'm joined by Gwen Bortner of Everyday Effectiveness, and we are going to make this super practical and super fun. I'm going to give Gwen 10 common business problems that she doesn't know about yet. And she's going to tell us whether a coach, consultant, or advisor is the best choice and why. So by the end of this episode, you'll know exactly what kind of support to look for the next time you need to invest in your business growth or solve a specific business problem. All right, Gwen, before we get started, I'm going to need you, for the sake of our listeners, to tell us what the difference between a coach, consultant, and advisor is, because there's a lot of confusion. And as you know, people call themselves a lot of things, but just because you call it a duck doesn't mean it is a duck.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem is, of course, I'm going to define these, and then someone else is going to come in and say, oh, no, I'm an X. And it's like, yeah, but what they just described was a Y.
Right, I know. It is subjective. Let's just say it is subjective.
It is subjective. So the way I define it, and the way I think is most clear, is a consultant is someone who's going to deliver you a specific result. And they know ahead what their result is that they're going to deliver. And they usually have a limited number of ways that they are going to deliver it. So they have a tool packet that is their favorite tool packet, whatever their tech stack is, whatever their methodologies are, etc. And they're coming in to deal with a very, very specific kind of issue. And you're hiring them for their expertise in that issue. It's not necessarily that that you're getting them to teach you or in anything else. They can be teaching you. And I will say, when I think buying like an online training, I think of that as a consultant. Okay. Not as a coach, unless there is a whole lot of individual one-on-one personal conversation associated with that training.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The second is coach, and the kind of the official, IFC, and International Federation of Coaching, or ICF.
ICF.
ICF. I felt like that was wrong. Yeah. ICF is that they do not provide answers. They're asking questions, and they're pulling information out of you. And so a coach really spends most of their time just asking questions, and rarely, if ever, in the true definition of coaching, are they providing answers for you, because it's about you deciding what is the right thing for you and them helping you take you down a path that maybe you haven't gone before. And so a lot of people call themselves coaches, but sometimes they're a little bit closer to the consultant side. And the reason I don't call myself a coach, I call myself a business advisor, is because although I will ask questions like a coach, I also have specific advice that I'm going to give you, particularly in areas that maybe you don't have the expertise to be able to pull it out of yourself. And so if you haven't had the experience, how on earth would you know that particular option as an answer, right? And so a business advisor typically is someone who is asking questions to understand, but actually giving advice. But different than a consultant, they don't have a specific tech stack or a favorite tech stack or a favorite solution. They have lots and lots and lots and lots of solutions that they can present to you given what your unique situation is.
Okay, and in this context, do any of those individuals provide hands-on support, done-for-you services?
Typically, a consultant is going to be doing the hands-on services. They are going to come in with a solution and do the work most of the time. There are exceptions to this, but that's pretty consistent when they're coming in as a consultant. A coach should not be doing anything. An advisor could, usually if they've got a team behind them that are able to implement the various options and solutions. So an advisor might, it not absolutely, depending on how they define themselves.
Okay. All right. So that's helpful. So a consultant is somebody who's going to come in and say, this is what you need to do, and this is how you do it. Coach is going to ask questions. What do you think? What if it sounded easy? That's one of my favorite coaching questions. Why? Because I'm like, nothing sounds easy. I wouldn't have hired you if something sounded easy. But okay, ask me that question. Sure. And then an advisor is somebody who asks questions based on what you're saying. I'm thinking they ask questions to get to the heart of what's really needed, right? The root cause is something that you've talked about before. And then they offer advice based on that. And they might say, well, what you need to do is this one thing. Or they might say, well, you've actually got 3 options.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Anything else you want to add to that?
I don't think so. I'm getting excited about the game show questions.
Yeah, I had this whole long preamble, but I'm too excited to wait. So I'm not going to do my whole long preamble. All I'm going to say is if you're listening to this right now and you're like, I had no idea there was a difference between coaches, consultants, advisors. I had no idea that the people who call themselves coaches aren't really coaches. You're not alone. That's why we're doing the episode. I think the first 3 people I hired to help me with my business were coaches. And the expectation I had is that they would advise me because I didn't know the difference. It wasn't until I started working with ICF coaches that I understood that a coach's number one job is to pull the information out from you. So if this is new information, you're not alone. But here's what we're going to do. We are going to play a little matchmaking game. I am going to come to the table with a concrete problem that I have heard people say, like people primarily in my own network say, and Gwen is going to tell us who the right person is to hire for the job. Not the right person as in go call Sheila and this is her phone number, but the right person as in this is the type of service provider you're looking for. All right, Gwen. So number 1, this is what I hear all the time. I'm feeling stuck in my business and I don't know what direction to take next. Who can help me?
So that typically is going to be a coach. It could be a business advisor, but it's probably a coach because what I'm hearing is I probably internally know what I want to do, but I'm afraid to say the words out loud. I'm afraid to make the commitment. I'm afraid it's going to sound silly, that I think I know what I want to do. Now, if you actually know what to do, but you don't know how to do it, that could be a consultant. Could be, possibly. More likely it's an advisor. So this one could go multiple ways, but my instinct is that's probably coach, because what I'm hearing is I internally think I have an idea, but I'm not comfortable really.
Okay. And so a coach would help me figure out because when I see here, I'm feeling stuck in my business, I don't know what direction to take next. I hear, well, I have a couple of options that have come to mind.
Yeah.
And I might need help choosing which option, and a coach can help me do that?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Next one. My Facebook ads aren't converting, and I don't understand why. Who do I hire, Gwen? And it's not Tonya Kubo. Please do not hire Tonya Kubo for this if this is your problem.
No, I wouldn't suggest on YouTube either. We probably do have recommendations for almost all of these. So
Yeah.
if you actually feel like you can reach out and let us know, and we can give you specific names. But yeah, this would be much more of a consultant. This is someone who has a particular area of expertise, has a way of doing it, understands a tech stack, knows what needs to be done, and can ask you the very, very specific questions about it to be able to make the tweaks, the changes, and the things, and or take over doing your Facebook ads for you.
If that's what you need. Yes.
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely a consultant.
Okay, so moral of the story, don't hire a coach who says they can help you with Facebook ads. Hire a consultant. You'll be happier. Trust us. Okay, third one. I need to decide whether to pivot my business model or double down on what's working.
This one is probably also a coach, but it could be a business advisor. The reason I say it's probably a coach is back to what I'm hearing is I've got ideas and I need to filter through them. Whenever I hear I've got ideas and I need to filter through them, usually that's a coach. Now, the reason I say it could be a business advisor, and you're going to hear me say this a lot because the line gets a little fuzzy between the two, is that you don't actually know what you would do in one or the other case. You've just heard this on Facebook. You've heard this on Instagram. You've seen it on social media. You're reading about it on LinkedIn, whatever it happens to be. And so you think you may need to do these things, but you don't actually have a burning desire, or you're a little more worried that you're going to miss an opportunity that you're supposed to take. That would be more of a business advisor situation for me, where we're actually going to help you think through, how does this actually change your business? Does this change actually align with where you want to go? And then what are the 18 different ways that you can do either one of these things, and making that best choice. So my instinct is it's probably what it really is a business advisor question that's a little bit couched in a coaching question. It sounds like you know what you want to do, but I'm guessing you really don't. There's not something in there that it's really about, everyone's talking about this, I don't want to miss out.
Yeah, and so what I would say, not that this is about me, but anytime I hear somebody talk about changing their business model, I would automatically send them toward an advisor, because most coaches specialize in clients who are following a specific business model.
True.
So
Absolutely true.
It's like,
I would agree with you 100%.
Like, I had a coach at one point. In my head, I was working on a marketing solution where I was working on visibility. And I was like, I should do this or I should do that. And it was the coach who was like, you're actually talking about two different business models. Like, the coach got me there. But when I was like, well, I'm trying to figure it out, they were like, that is not my area of expertise. You're going to have to know more about each business model you're talking about in order for us to like have a solution for you. So, okay. Next one. So now we're on our fourth. I know what I need to do, but I can't seem to follow through consistently.
So that absolutely sounds like a coaching answer.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be. It totally could be a coaching answer. It's not a consulting answer.
Okay, so definitely no, it's not consulting. Got it.
It's not a consulting answer. It's probably a coaching answer, which is, do we have mindset and behavior issues? Those tend to be more around coaching issues. But it also could be a business advisor answer. And the reason being is, often when we talk about that, I can't get myself to do it, what we aren't really understanding is maybe we're doing things that we don't need to be doing at all. And that resistance or that procrastination or whatever is actually telling us something positive instead of something negative. Where the coach is going to help you work through the mindset of why you're not doing it. But the business advisor is going to ask, not only, why are you not doing, but what's keeping you and what makes you think that you should be doing it in the first place. And looking at your overall business and business model and saying, does this actually make sense for what you're doing as a bigger picture. So it could be one, it could be the other, but typically what we find is it's usually not about that I can't do it, because most entrepreneurs, period, actually have a lot of drive and ability to get things done. So there's usually something else going on there. And like I said, it could be a coaching issue, but a lot of times this is more of a business advising issue that we're amongst activities that aren't actually productive.
Okay. So now we've got scenario number 5. The problem is I need more revenue, but I'm already spread too thin. Who can help me?
That's most likely going to actually be a business advisor.
Okay, so this is the first one where we're like business advisor, period. Okay.
Yeah, because that's a very, very broad problem. And broad problems need a broader vision. It's probably not a coaching issue. It's probably not something that you've got inside of you that just needs to be pulled out, most likely. And you might end up needing to bring in a consultant once you get clearer on what the problem is. But whenever there's this kind of vagueness about the problem, that's almost always a business advisor issue. So that they can look at what are all of the issues that could be causing your revenue problem. What are all the places? A consultant is going to apply their particular tool to the problem. So if you brought in a networking consultant, they're going to say, or a marketing consultant, they're going to say this is a marketing problem. If you bring in a sales consultant, they're going to say it's a sales problem. If you bring in a finance consultant, they're going to say it's a financial, profitability problem. And all of those could be correct, and any one of those could be correct. But you really want to be looking at a broader stroke, and that's where you want to be looking at a business advisor who will really help you look at root cause and then move forward.
Yeah. Well, and this is one that I'll just chime in briefly on and say, this is also one of those things that if you're working with a coach and you say these words, a lot of times they will tell you, well, okay, why are you spread too thin? You'll give them a few answers and then they'll say, well, go hire a VA, offload those low-level tasks, because they know that the question's actually outside of their scope of service. So they know they can't advise you, but they also know that for some people, hiring help alleviates the pain. But what I would say is, back to a consultant will tell you whether you're ready to hire a VA or not, and what you need to do to hire a VA. And then the advisor would tell you if actually it's the low-level tasks that are the problem to begin with, or if it's something else. Okay, here's another one. It's a little similar to the last, but in scenario 6, I am overwhelmed with too many ideas. I am such a creative, Gwen. I just have visions and visions and visions, and I just don't know which to pursue.
So this would be true for so many people. And it's interesting because people often want to hire a consultant to implement all of these visions, right? Which is not generally the best idea, because we're still end up spreading ourselves too thin. And a lot of times they want to hire a coach to try and help them filter through all of those ideas. And that could work depending on the coach and depending on your own self-awareness. But most of the time, this is where you need a business advisor who will actually tell you no and ask you much harder questions about why we think this is the next good idea.
Okay, now you have to tell me, so I just got like a little bit of hair on the back of my neck stood up here. Why would I pay you or anybody to tell me no?
Because telling you no helps you stay focused and actually put your energy and your time and your money into the things that are actually going to create more energy and time and money.
That sounds like a very useful answer that I, quite honestly, do not like. Just going to tell you that right now. Don't like it. It can be true. It can be useful, but I guess that's where the whole advisor thing comes in, huh?
Yeah, it really is. It's the difference of not just, I'll say, placating, but saying, no, that just doesn't make sense. Or if you are going to do that, what are you not going to do? And it's like, well, I'm not going to not do any of the other things. And it's like, not going to happen. At some point that's all going to implode on itself.
Okay. I will get used to hearing the word no then if I hire a business advisor. Making that note right now. Okay. Scenario 7. I'm trying to scale my business, but I keep hitting roadblocks. Who can help me?
This one, if you know specifically what the roadblocks are, often this is a consultant that can actually help you remove a particular roadblock. If you're just generically hitting roadblocks and you can't really describe them well, I would generally say that's probably a coach, because part of it is getting really clear on what are you defining as a roadblock? What is the roadblock? So in this case, we're using a little more generic, but if you can give me a specific roadblock, probably a consultant.
Okay, so my roadblock is I can't get past 90,000 a year.
So that would be a coach to help you to first start understanding why is 90,000, why are you hitting that? Because that easily could be a mindset issue. Totally could be a mindset issue. And if they're a good coach, at the point that they help you realize, is it a mindset issue? Is it actually a sales issue? Like you don't actually like getting and being on sales calls? What is the issue that's around the I'm not getting past $90,000? They would bring in the consultant who would actually help you get past that.
Okay. All right. Scenario 8. I need somebody to help me create SOPs for my business. For those of you who... Okay, so those are standard operating procedures. And why a consultant and not a business advisor in that case?
Because putting it, first off, you have procedures. They may not be standard.
Fair.
Right. Everyone has procedures. Everyone thinks they don't have processes, procedures. You do. They may not be standard. They may not be consistent. They may not be the most effective. But this is where you want someone who really pays attention to those level of detail of what are those details, and where are we being consistent, where are we not being consistent, and how do we want to document it, and all of those things. And typically a business advisor is not going to be the person who's going to come in and do that. If they had a team, possibly they would help. But generally what they're really helping you figure out is the areas that you need to focus on first to put your standard operating procedures in place, as opposed to actually putting them in place.
Okay. All right. Number 9. I need to raise my prices, but I'm afraid of losing clients. Who can help me with that problem? Or should I just suck it up and move on with my life? That's, I guess, fine answer. This
is definitely a coach or business advisor, kind of depending on, because a lot of times this is a coaching issue, because it's I know what I need to do. I'm not quite sure how to do it. I'm having mental blocks of doing the thing, because everything I heard there is, I know I need to raise my prices, but I'm afraid of something. Typically that's a coach. Now, a lot of times a business advisor can help you through that, but I wouldn't necessarily hire a business advisor for that kind of problem. I would look at working with a coach. If you had a business advisor, they probably could help you with that problem. You wouldn't necessarily need to hire a coach for that problem in addition.
Okay. Finally, I'm struggling with cash flow. The money goes out faster than I can bring it in. Who helps me with that solution?
This is an interesting one, because it's the only one that we've had that I would say it could be a consultant and it could be a business advisor, and we're jumping over the coach space. And the reason being is it could be a consultant, and in this case, I would call bringing in an accountant, a CFO, a bookkeeper, a controller. All of those in this case, I would be calling a consultant. Okay. They might not define themselves as a consultant, but as we are defining the 3 categories.
I was like, we only have 3 choices here, so we got to figure out.
We only have three choices, and really, a CFO is much closer to a business advisor. But a bookkeeper, accountant, controller is much more in the consultant range, and you may just need to get a handle on all of those details. And that's really where your cash flow issue is. The business advisor place, though, is the cash flow is we're making bad choices that we aren't really understanding the broader ramification of those bad choices until we see it in our cash flow, until we see that our bank account is empty. That would be a business advisor issue, because they're going to look at the broader place and say, what are all the places that we need to be making some, tweaks, some adjustments, some things, and not just in the I'll say the historical way of looking back and saying, oh, here's expenses you should cut. That can also be part of what a business advisor does, but a bookkeeper, accountant can also be helping with that. But instead also saying, let's talk about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it. And are those the things that we should be doing in the future so that we're actually improving our cash flow? So it could be one, it could be the other. And this is one where likely it's both.
Tell me what that would look like if it was both.
So this is a problem that I've solved for a lot of our clients. They've had this kind of issue. And so I come in the advising issue, looking at the big picture and the bigger future decisions, and often helping them think about process and how they're using their money differently. But then we also bring in a bookkeeper, accountant, controller person who's making sure that the details are actually being tracked so that as we're trying to make these bigger decisions, we have more accurate information. And so it's a bit of both in this case. But almost always in that situation, I'm starting to get clear understanding so that we bring in the right type of person, whether it be a bookkeeper or an accountant or a controller, all three, some combination thereof.
Okay. All right. So I'm curious from you, because we've just gone through 10 scenarios. I guess, first of all, how realistic are these scenarios? Do you feel like these 10 are things that most business owners encounter? Are there a couple
we hear these all the time. I mean, I hear them all the time from my clients. I know you hear them all the time from your clients. I bet if we sat, if we grab 10 random people who've done any sort of this kind of service consulting, they would say, oh yeah, I've heard at least, 6 of these.
Okay. So these are all pretty fair, realistic examples. Are there any of these that you think are more common than others that a business and let's take it in phases. So I don't like to do phases by revenue, because you can be a brand new business and barely know what you're doing, but right place, right time, and you can be a $500,000 business. But I do know that some of these issues tend to be tied to revenue. So what do you think's most common when you're, say, under 6 figures? Let's do under 6 figures. Then let's do like 100 to $500,000, and then above $500,000, just for ease.
Usually under 6 figures, usually is going to mean that it's an earlier stage business, or it isn't yet a full-time gig, or, there's quite a few things that usually happen at under 6 figures. You could have been doing it for 5 years, but hopefully you haven't been doing it as your full-time gig, because, although, it sounds like 6 figures is a lot. It's like, 100,000 when we start paying all the expenses and whatnot doesn't actually leave a lot to go in our pocket, right? And so typically most of those are going to be either very narrow, specific coaching problems, or they're going, consulting problems or coaching problems, because it's usually a lot more about what do we understand? How are we thinking about things for ourselves? It's a lot of the self-talk that's going on in our head that tends to be the problem. And so, the issues that we're coming across usually is either a consultant, which could be, like I said, taking a course because I just need to learn some things. I don't know how to do something, or bringing in someone who knows how to do something to, teach me how to do something, or it's a coach. And like I said, this is where a lot of places that we find folks that are doing instructional programs, but with a coaching element, is some live interaction with somebody. And that tends to be a really good place for that, because it also tends to be cost appropriate for that level as well, right? And I'm not answering your actual question because I can't remember what all of the 10 were. But
No, it's all good. It's all good.
but that's generally what I'm expecting people to be investing in at that level.
Yeah, I actually think you're answering a better question than the one I asked, so keep going.
Okay. Well, when we get into the 100,000 to the, mid six figures, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's 450 or 600, or, whatever, but in that kind of early to mid six figures, that's where you start seeing more of a mix between services. And I think it becomes the hardest place, quite honestly, because the price tags vary greatly. And what I see happen a lot is as people are moving into that six-figure realm, particularly as they're moving, up closer to the mid six figures, they're often still using the same types of solutions that they were using at the five-figure and really low six-figure answer.
Mhm.
And the problem is their problems aren't those kind of problems anymore.
Yeah.
They actually have pretty good knowledge. They have pretty good experience. They're seeing success. You would always say at that point they've undoubtedly got product market fit because you probably can't get there if you don't have product market fit. But a lot of times they're still trying to solve marketing issues that
Yeah.
aren't really the issue anymore. So they're investing time and money and energy. And I think this is the place where most people get really frustrated with their investment because it's like, I'm doing all the stuff, but I'm not getting the results I want. And I think it's because it's like, yeah, because the results you want aren't actually the results that you need or are appropriate for where you are in business right now. And so the things aren't, it's a miss. Things just aren't lining up the way that they're supposed to. And as I said, I think this is the place where it's complicated because there are probably a few things that can be done with a class or a course or, kind of a very directed piece. And that's one of the statements I say a lot is if it's a very specific acute problem, then you can go with a very specific framework, detailed, prescriptive answer. But when you're in that range, that low six to mid six range, it's usually not that prescriptive anymore. The problem probably has a lot more nuance than you're giving it credit for having. That's when you're probably needing to move to more of a real coach and or a business advisor who's going to take into consideration that nuance, that context. We use, you have to flash up your can because I don't have my drink with me, but yeah, the context matters. Exactly. This is where the context matters really starts making a difference because that nuance actually is way more important than you're giving it credit for. And so it could typically, this is where we're going to look at coach or look at business advisor. The problem where I see, and I think you've seen it too, and I'd love to get your perspective because you've had a lot of these conversations as well, is I think a lot of people go to coach because they think that's what they need because they think it's them. When what they actually need is business advisor because it's actually not them. They actually need new information they don't have that they're not going to get through an education program. They need outside perspective and they need wisdom to come into the conversation. I mean, and what are your thoughts? And then we'll do the last level.
Yeah, well, no, I think you're exactly right because unless they're uncoachable, unless they are the type of person who is like, I know what I know, and I just want somebody to like make this thing happen for me, then I do think that I really think they need a business advisor because they're at the place now where oftentimes the only way they can get any help is by paying their way into bigger rooms. But oftentimes they're paying their way into bigger rooms with people who only know how to preach success in the way that they got success.
Yeah.
And
so preach it.
Right. I mean, and this is, this has been my own story as well, but it's one that a lot of my peers, because, a lot of my peers are low to mid six figures, as they should be, given where I'm at in business. And a lot of it is going into rooms and being told, like I have a friend right now who is she's doing production. So she is moving away from traditional coaching and she is going into supporting creators with production. And everybody tells her that is the fast track to burnout and there's no money to be had there. What she needs to be doing is coaching creators and then directing them to hire offshore talent for production. One, that's not what she wants to do. That does not sound like a good day to her, right? She doesn't want to be on coaching calls all the time. Two, she's like, what you're telling me to do is really just sell them on the idea of subpar production. Not that you can't get offshore talent that's incredible. I have hired offshore talent that's amazing. But oftentimes what they're talking about is charge a premium and, make sure your cost of fulfillment is as tiny as possible. And that's one way to do it. But if you have a vision and you want to achieve something, what you really need is somebody to come in with some wisdom who actually can ask you the questions to find out, are you striving for something you really want, or are you striving for something that somebody else told you should want? And this is happening with somebody I know right now, is this the track that you should be running on, or are you just do you lack so much confidence that you're on the right track that every time somebody presents a new idea, you automatically think you should go chase that, right? That's where an advisor, this is back to your point about advisors telling you no, right? This is when it's like, okay, if you keep changing your path every month, you're going to have tried 12 paths at the end of the year that you will think all have failed, but most of the time, none of them were ever given the right opportunity to succeed.
Yeah.
So I would agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said that, I was thinking about a client I had some time ago that it's like, well, let's do this thing now. And it's like, there's no evidence that this isn't the thing that we're doing isn't actually working. Everything shows that it is. It may not be working, like at 100%, but it's not working at 2%
Right.
either. It's working and we're early enough stage that I feel like we need to give it more time. It's like, no, we're going to try this other thing. It's like, but why? Right? Now, the other thing that in this mid six is that's usually also where you do need to start bringing in some consultants.
Mm-hmm.
Some consulting type roles, whether it's a VA, whether it's someone helping you with social media. There's all sorts of places that the consultant piece can be fitting in. But back to making sure that you're bringing in the right one for what you need right now, not the one that everyone says is what you're supposed to do, because that's what everyone says. Back to, best practices are usually just common practices. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're best, and hardly ever does it consider context, right?
Yeah.
So back to a business advisor can help you see where do you want to invest what I'm going to call your consulting dollars. You're having someone help you get the work done, right? Like I said, sometimes we're in there, you actually need a coach. You need to get out of your head and start really understanding what's in your head and how your head is working. So all three could be true in that place. But I think the biggest challenge is people keep investing in the same type of help that they were early on, which is not the type of help they need anymore, because it seems scary. It's like, I'm going to have to pay quite a bit more for a business advisor. But if you look at it, a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, that's actually not that much more expensive than what you're going to pay for this other program.
Right.
It just seems different, right? But it's like, yeah, but you're getting a lot more individual help, so it's probably a good investment. It's one of those things that it feels like, oh, it's a huge difference, and when you actually look at them, just like, it's actually not. And as we move to, in the upper six figures, in the early seven figures, this is where they typically don't need coaches. And if they do, it's coaches that are very specifically niched in their coaching direction.
Yeah. This is like money
They're not
mindset
a business
coach.
coach.
Yeah.
They are a sales coach. They
Yeah.
are, like an attitude coach.
Mhm.
They have very, very specific areas that they're focusing on. You more likely need a business advisor because you're too small to actually have an advisory board, but you need someone who's functioning in that role. And the advisory board is to hold you accountable, tell you no, and ask you really hard questions.
Right.
Right. So that's a business advisor. Couldn't also still need a coach, and definitely will probably be hiring consultants to do specific aspects for you in your business, either long-term, ongoing consulting work, or short-term. I've got this project I need help with.
Okay. All right. Well, we have covered a ton of ground today. Thank you for letting me fire it all at you, because it's so much easier to be the machine gun than to be the person on the other side of the machine gun. In more ways than one, I suppose. So the key takeaway today is that there is actually no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to business support. I will say that I was surprised actually at the number of scenarios that had more than one option. Because when I was coming up with them, I had my own bias on what made sense. But what we now know, right, is coaches help you draw out your own knowledge and develop personally. Consultants provide expert advice on specific problems. And advisors are the ones who step in with strategic guidance based on extensive experience, wisdom, and perspective. Sometimes you'll need more than one type of support at the same time, and that's fine. Sometimes you need one, and then you kind of, I don't want to say graduate to the other, but you have one, they solve the problem, and then that uncovers a problem that's better suited for another. But the most important thing here is that you match your specific need with the right type of professional. That's how you actually maximize the return on the investment. Otherwise, it's just spending, unfortunately. When you make the right match, you save time, you save money, most of all, you save frustration, and you actually get the results you're looking for. And this also helps you come away with the reality that it's not just you. Okay, you're not the only person on the planet with the problem. You probably just have been hiring the wrong service provider to help you out in solving it. Now, if you want to try to figure out, or if you need some help figuring out the right type of support for your business at this time, this is one of those things that Gwen actually really loves to do. Gwen loves to connect people with the right service provider, whoever that is. If it's a coach, if it's a consultant, she already mentioned, we've got a pretty extensive network between the two of us, I would say. There's not much you might need that we can't offer some support with. So we have a special 30-minute call that you can book with Gwen. If you go to everydayeffectiveness.com, click on contact, and we'll have the call button right there. And you can just book a call directly with Gwen, chat for 30 minutes, and then she can let you know, do you need a coach? Do you need a consultant? Do you need an advisor? And based on your specific circumstances, she'll even maybe front you with a few names of who would be the best fit for you. Okay, so it's not a sales call. That's not what this is about. This is really just making sure that you don't invest in a really good service provider who just isn't equipped to help you with your actual problem. Anything you want to add there, Gwen?
No, I love that. And because there's nothing worse. I know that I've done it. I know that you've done it because we've talked about it. There's nothing worse than investing a ton of money in somebody that doesn't get you the result that you actually need because they aren't actually the person that you actually need.
Yep. And it's not your fault. It's not their fault. It's just the wrong fit.
It's just the wrong fit. Yeah.
All right. Well, we will see you next time. And Gwen, thank you so much for doing this. This was fun. We're going to have to do it again. And as always,
I loved the game show. Give me the questions.
Yeah. Next time, I'm going to find a way to do sound effects. It's going to be so much fun. All right. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tonya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallywant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.